My name is Dr. Pierre-Majorique Léger. Welcome back to our video series. Today we are talking about the research protocol. The research protocol is very important. Your project, you've developed your project, you have developed the experimental design, you've applied for ethics, you now have an ethics certificate to conduct your study. Now you need a very detailed research protocol. At Tech3lab, we have a template, and this template provides you exactly step by step what needs to be inside this research protocol. You need to edit it, right? You need to go from the template and change some things in the template. In this case, we have a demo template that I'm going to run through the template with you and indicate which part of the template you should modify to be in line with your the research protocol of your study. All right, so let's follow with me on the screen what we have in this research protocol template. So let's go in this template and let's look together what we will find in the template of the research protocol and what are the different sections that we should expect to find in this document. I'm going to read online with you with the template that is currently the 2025 template at the lab. This may evolve over time and we may change and add some stuff, but overall you must look at this from a very generic point of view of what we should expect to find in such a template. So let's look together. First of all, the research protocol must have a front page, right? The first page of the document should inform on what is the title of the research project. There should be an ethics certificate number on the first page because you can only run an experiment for which you have an ethics certificate. So it must be clearly indicated here. There should also be a date by which we are authorized to conduct the experiment. So when we receive from the ethics committee the authorization to conduct our experiment, there's a date by which we can run the experiment. That should be clearly indicated on the first page of the protocol. There also should be the name of the principal investigator. This is the person responsible for this experiment, right? So this person's name should also be on the first page. And Tech3lab. This document, this template, is currently of 15 pages. There should always be an indication at the bottom of the page of how many pages there is in the document. So typically in this case, I'm on page 1 of 15, and you really want to have, in this case, and you'll have to edit it because the protocol may be longer than 15 pages, but it should be possible if you lose the page on the floor that you should be able to reconstruct the protocol and know exactly that you have all the page of the protocol. So numbering and also indicating how many pages you have. Also, at the bottom of the footer of the template, you should have a clear name of what is the project that we're currently looking at. So there's no ambiguity on, am I using the right protocol for the experiment I'm conducting? So on the first page of the protocol, there should be a table of content. And in this table of content, you will find all the different sections, so you have an overview of all the protocol at once. First of all, it starts with the project details. Is there any specific characteristics for this project that I, as a moderator of this experiment, I should know about? Then there should be some procedure in the case of a late event, right? For what happens if the participant comes late, cancel. So there should be some very specific information about this. Then some preparation procedure, what to do before the participant comes in for your data collection. What to do then the participant arrival, so how to greet the participant, how to welcome the participant at the lab. There should be a section about the psychophysiological montage. That means how to install all the instrumentation for the experiment. The longest section is the experiment itself, how to proceed with the different part of the experiment, and this section will be very different from one experiment to another. Then how to save the recording. So at the end of an experiment, you must save all the files and how to proceed with that. Debriefing and compensation. So at the end of the experiment, how I debrief the participant, how I thank the participant and provide the compensation for participating in our experiment. Procedure for data export that may or may not be done at the end of the data collection, but still you have a clear indication how to export the data of this experiment. And an end of day procedure, what to do at the end of a day of an experiment. So maybe you've been conducting the whole day, several experiments. What specific instruction do you have at the end of the day of a data collection? So let's start with the project detail. We have a first section of this template dedicated to any specific information that I may need as a moderator to conduct this experiment. Here we don't necessarily want to have everything, right? It's only things that you want to highlight for the moderator to know about any specificity of the project. This project has been designed to run in a very specific room. There are specificity about the participant of this study or any instrumentation that is being used. So use this section wisely to highlight things that you really want to have the moderator to know in advance before running the experiment. Moving on to the second section, we have procedure for late arrival. What to do when a participant comes late. So these are procedure that most of the time we're using the same, but maybe there are some specific elements here because I don't know, the experiment is not conducted at the lab, or maybe it's conducted on that day you're the only one being able to greet participants. So here we have a specific element that you can eventually modify depending on the project of what to do if the participant comes in 5 minutes, 15 minutes, if the participant doesn't show up, or if there is a participant that is scheduled afterward, and for example, your data collection starts a few minutes later. So all of the things that you want to let the moderator know of things they need to do given some specificity of your project. Again, feel free to edit this section depending of the specificity of the project. Moving to the third section, this is the preparation procedure before the arrival of the participant. So before the participant comes into the lab, there are some specific things that you need to do for this participant, right? So making sure the room is ready. Here in the template, I'm going to highlight a few elements. This may change from project to project, so you need to go and make sure that these apply to your project. So what the moderator is expected to do prior to the arrival of a participant, well, we've highlighted some element in yellow that are specific to the project. So these are the type of thing when using the template that you want to edit and make it your own, right? So there are some element in yellow that we have highlighted. So type of things to consider before participants arrive. We need to prepare the computer, right? Maybe you're using Toby and Cobalt and you need to turn on those computers. You need to prepare the consent form. So you can open on the iPad the electronic consent form and eventually place the iPad just nearby where the participant will sit. You need to open the lab notes. The lab notes in a project are done in SharePoint. So on SharePoint, there's a specific element what we call the suivi de projet. So in essence, these are lab notes. These are places where you, as a moderator, you will input some key information that you'd like to everyone to know about this participant. This is completely denominalized and there's no an anonymous, right? So this is not the place to put the participant's name, but maybe you want to indicate that the person is right-handed or left-handed, or maybe there was an unexpected thing about this participant. So these are the places where we will expect you to input data about specific things that we need to consider maybe when we run the analysis for this participant. We need to start capture if you're using capture in the project. We need to start Toby Pro. Specifically in this case, we indicate start Toby Pro in a different computer than capture. You have the step-by-step instruction how to prepare the project in Toby to be ready for your participant. Prepare the blue box observer and the equipment. So that means the actual blue box where we will collect the physiological reactions of the participant. So we need to prepare and make sure we're using the right blue box. and provide all the elements you'll need to make the montage, including the cable, the medical tape, the glove. All of that must be prepared, put right beside where the participant will sit during the experiment. Make sure the chair is set and the armrests are up, and just generally prepare the room. Make sure it's clean. If there are some garbage, make sure to clean the room before, and turn on the light to indicate not to enter in that room. So every experimental room has a specific red light to indicate that an experiment is currently running, and you want to make sure this light is open so that no one enters your room while you're collecting the data with your participant. The next section is about the participant arrival at the lab. So this is the moment where you greet the participant, and this is all the workflow up until the participant is seated and has signed the consent form. By the way, there's at the top of every section a section in blue, which is somehow comments about this section. So this is not something that that you have to read to the participant. This is only information about this section. So you have specific information how to greet the participant, and depending where the experiment will be conducted, there might be some slight difference if you're conducting at Louis Collin or you're collecting downtown, and you may want to edit these elements. One thing for sure, make sure to ask the participant if they need to use the restroom before starting the experiment. If the participant is chewing gum, they need to throw it away. The participant should not also bring any food or drink inside the room. This is the moment also to tell the participant to leave their electronics, anything that would disturb their attention during the experiment. There's always a special place securely that they can use a key to secure their personal belonging. So the participants arrives at the lab, and I refer you to the video we've created so that you can follow how to proceed with welcoming a participant. And then we have a welcoming verbatim. So this is a verbatim that you will want to edit depending of the type of study and the content. There are specific elements highlighted in yellow that you must edit depending of the study. But this is really the welcome verbatim. Verbatim in an experiment protocol like this is very important. The idea is that the participant is exposed to exact instruction every time. So it's very important to abide to the verbatim, especially if more than one person may conduct the experiment over time. Also, we want this to be somehow, you make sure to read in advance this verbatim, because it should not sound like you're reading from a sheet. So make sure that you practice in advance those verbatim so that they're somehow fluid when you present them to the participant. One key element is the consent form. Remember, you have placed the iPad beside where the participant will sit. And so the consent form is the one that has been approved by the ethics committee. It's an electronic consent form. The participant gets to sign it. The moderator also needs to sign the consent form so that both of them get a copy, electronic copy at the end. Again, there's some verbatim about this. This is a very important step. Make sure the participant reads carefully and answer clearly all the questions of the consent form to be eligible to participate in the study. One thing at this point is the participant can refuse to sign, and that would be the end of the participation of this person to the study, right? So there's a very important point here that the procedure may stop at this point should the participant refuse to sign and decide to leave the lab. The next section is about the montage. Do not proceed to this section before signing the consent form. There's no reason why you would, for example, feel that you need to save time and have the participant read the consent form while you install the physiological or electrophysiological instrument. Never do that, right? It's very important that you proceed with signing the consent form before we move to this section about the montage. The montage here is a template for using psychophysiological recording, including EDA, the EKG sensor, anything related also to measuring emotional, facial, automatic facial analysis using a camera. So this is not including EEG, and a specific template is also available if you're conducting an EEG study. So in this case, we provide a clear set of instruction how to proceed with installing the EDA sensor in the palm of the hand of the participant, connecting the wire for the blue box that records the participant's emotional reaction, how to validate those instruments, and some of the verbatim you typically would tell the participant while installing those sensor during the installation, asking, for example, if the participant is comfortable. All in all, this is all about making sure that everything is set up correctly so that the data acquisition runs properly during the experiment. One note about the physiological montage. It is possible that the participant decide at this point to remove his or her consent to participate. And at this point, everything must stop. So it is not because the participant has signed the consent form that the person cannot remove their consent. So this is at the moment where you would stop and thank the participant. Moving on to the next section. This is the main part. This is the experimental part. And this section will be very different from one data collection to another. Still, there are some similarity, and we invite you to start from this template, which provide general section that are usually in every experiment. For example, we start with somehow an introduction to the experiment, right? We are preparing the participant, telling the participant, this is the type of experiment that you're about to do. We don't want to reveal about the hypothesis. So what is being told here to the participant must be clear and pre-approved, and it is eventually already in the ethics certificate, right? So what is being told to the participant at this point is very strict about, so that we're not revealing anything about the experiment to the participant. The first stage in this process is the calibration. So there are many tools that needs to be calibrated before we can use them in an experiment. This is the case, for example, with the eye tracking. So we refer you to other video we've created so that you learn how to calibrate the Tobii eye tracker. This procedure would be run first. Next, you need to make sure to position the webcam for cobalt capture. So cobalt capture requires a webcam which is positioned at the top of the computer of the participant. It may or may not be correctly set. Maybe the height of the participant makes so that the participant is smaller. So there's a procedure by which you need to check if the camera is well positioned so that you capture the face of the participant. The next part is to actually start capture. So capture is our software to be able to capture the screen of the participant, the screen recording, and the face of the participant. So this is an internally developed software here at Tech3lab. There's a separate video to learn how to proceed and use capture, but this is where you would actually start the capture and open it and start. You need to start Tobii. So eventually you've run the calibration. You need to accept the calibration so that you can now proceed with the experiment. So the next step is to actually start capture. What I mean is that you start actually recording the screen of the participant and the face of the participant. So this is the moment where the video starts. There's still some equipment to start, but you have the rec button has been pressed at this point for capture. Then you need to start Tobii. So in essence, you've calibrated the participant. It's now time to accept the calibration and start the recording of the eye tracker. The last step is to start the cobalt blue box. So the cobalt blue box is actually on the other side with the participant. you need to go and make sure to start. And there's a procedure by which we need to synchronize the equipment. So you make sure to follow the exact procedure to make sure synchronization happens. But you will need to walk back inside the room of the participant to start this instrument. There are some figure that we refer you to make sure that the recording on the blue box is correctly set. Again, there are other video on the blue box, Cobalt blue box, that I'd like to refer you to make sure that you know how to operate this instrument. Again, there's a set of verbatim that you will provide the participant during this procedure so that the participant is somehow keep a situational awareness of where we are in the experiment, so that you're providing them that we're now ready to proceed to start with the experiment. Generally, when we start the experiment, we have a baseline. So I again refer you to other video we've done on the eye tracking. So when we demonstrate how to use the vanilla baseline, but this is a video that is being run at the beginning of an experiment to have somehow a moment of calm, relaxed, attentive state with the participant that we can use as a baseline for different calculation in the experiment. Finally, this is where we start our experiment. So far, everything I just mentioned is quite generic across many different experiments we're running here at the lab. Here, this is where this can be very specific to the different tasks that needs to be performed. And here you'll have a lot of editing, right? So this section is really something that needs to be edited, and we have specifically indicated in red that you need to modify this section. This section may incorporate many things, including a questionnaire. So you may have a questionnaire on Qualtrics prior to the experiment. There may be another one after the experiment. There may be one after every task of the experiment. There can be a stimuli for each task of the participant will have to conduct. So the stimuli, again, I will refer you to video of how we proceed to use Toby and the timeline in Toby when we inserted different experimental stimuli that are being performed and the task instruction. Notice that you have clear verbatim indicating how to proceed, right? So the participant must be instructed what to do. When we conduct an experiment, this is not a free form, right? You have a clear goal for the participant to perform in the task. So make sure that this goal is well understood by the participant, and don't hesitate to have in your verbatim question to the participant, making sure that the person participating in the experiment really understood the instruction for the participant. There may be also warm-up tasks. Maybe your experiment is complicated and you want to make sure the participant understand how to proceed. So there may be one or two tasks that will not count as the experiment, but are just there to make sure the participant understand what to do. So again, this section can be very long, but here the idea is to have for each task, what are the specific instruction, what are the questionnaire prior or after these tasks, or maybe questionnaire that you have at the beginning or at the end, the different visual stimulus presented to the participant and the task they need to perform. When we finish this section, there is probably an interview. This is not always the case, but I would say in most cases, we have an interview with a semi-structured interview with the participant at the end of the data collection. These questions have been approved by the ethics committee. So the section that you have here must be questions that you specifically stated in the ethics approval of your project. And you would have some probably very precise verbatim of what will be the question. These questions could be asked across the window with the microphone, or I can go and sit with the participant to have a conversation and an interview. It depends on the project. In any case, it must be in the experimental protocol, very precisely written of how to proceed with, for example, how the interview is being conducted. One last note about the experiment, and obviously you'll feel that I'm repeating myself, but it's very important. The participant can remove their consent at any point during this. So this protocol is set in a way that if the participant decides to stop their participation, everything must stop. You must thank the participant and also provide a compensation, because if the experiment has started and the participant decides to remove their consent, they're still receiving the compensation. Let's move to the next section, which is saving the recording. We've run the experiment and we have one goal. We want the data, and we want to make sure of the quality of the data, and we want to make sure that the data is safe. So before the participants leave and before you actually start the procedure for the end of the experiment, make sure to save your data. There is a set of instruction for each of the recording, including the eye tracker, the blue box, any element related to the synchronization. So make sure to tell the participant that you need to take a short pause to make sure to save all the data before you proceed to the next step. This is a crucial step. Make sure that you do it. Don't let the participant go and say, oh, I'm going to save my recording later. Never do that, right? Make sure that you save the data properly before you move on to the next section. All right, debriefing and compensation. This is the procedure at the end. We've completed the experiment, we've completed the interview of the participant, and this is where you want to make sure that there's a debrief. So maybe, I don't know, there was a project where there was a deception, there was a specific hypothesis that you were testing. So in many cases, you'll have to debrief the participant about his or her participation to your study. Obviously, the idea here is not to provide extensive detail, but if there was a deception, you have the obligation to tell the participant about that. When we reach compensation, there is a electronic form for the compensation for the participants to enter their personal information, email, address, full name is on the compensation form. It is important to note that the compensation provided to the participant is mostly done by Interact transfer, and the person will receive an email. Depending on when you watch this video, make sure to check how long typically the participant takes to receive the compensation, because this may vary. And also, make sure to, in the case the participant wonder why you have personal information on the compensation form, obviously the whole experiment is anonymous, and we make sure not to have any information in the recording with the name of the participant. Obviously, we name the name for the compensation form and also the consent form at the beginning. But there's no relationship, there's no ID between those forms and the rest of the data. So it's not possible to recreate the link between those forms and the data. So that's very important that you keep that in mind. So if the participant asks a question about the anonymity of their participation, well, it's the case, right? We have no unique ID to connect those forms together after the experiment. So when the participants leave the lab, the data that you've recorded for the experiment is completely anonymous. So after the compensation form has been filled, the experiment is completed, and you must walk back the participant up to the exit. Make sure that the participant take back their belongings. So maybe they have placed the phone or any other belonging in one of the lockers. So make sure that they take their belongings, go back. Maybe there's a coat or they have to wear some boots. So make sure that you walk with them, you stay with the participant up until the participant has left the lab. It's very important that you don't leave the participant to wander in the lab. Very important to make sure that the door of the lab is closed after the participant has left for security purposes. So now the participant has left, and we are now ready to export the data. This may not be something that you do immediately after the participant has left the lab. Maybe you're batching this. Maybe it's an end of day or the next day, but at some point data will need to be exported. And here you have a specific procedure for data export for the different instrumentation that you have used in the data collection, specifically the blue box, the data from Capture, the data from Toby, There might be also some post-processing. If you're using Face Reader, you may need to take the video from Cobalt into Face Reader to post-process the data. So all of this data export and post-process needs to be done as soon as possible, right? You don't want to wait like a few days to make sure you do that, because the worst thing that can happen is there's a lot of moving parts in this type of experiment, and we need to make sure that the data acquisition was properly done. So as soon as it is possible, data export, data post-processing must be done and following those procedures. I will refer you to many videos we've done with each of these instruments to explain how to proceed with the data export and data post-processing ready to be uploaded on SharePoint, where the raw data of any experiment is archived and saved and backup. We've reached the end of the procedure. You've probably collected during a day several different participants, and now it's the time for you to complete your day and leave the lab. But before, there are some key things that you must do. So first of all, you need to keep your lab environment clean and make sure that you don't leave any personal belonging or any trash in this room. So make sure that you complete the day by cleaning your room, putting the trash in the trash can, empty the trash can into the lab trash. You're responsible for your own trash in the lab room. Make sure that you close all the computers. Make sure to charge the blue box. The blue box, it has a battery and must be charged every day. You also need to turn off the light. Again, your lab room is your work environment. You're responsible for the lab environment, and the room must be kept clean and secure so that the instrumentation, the work environment of everyone is kept professional. So hopefully this video was insightful and you now have a clear idea how to modify the template and make it your own. It's very important to have a clear research protocol, to have a clear indication of how to proceed with your experiment. For example, you may not be the only moderator in a data collection, so it's highly possible that someone else is using the same instruction to conduct the experiment if you're working in teams or there are multiple researchers involved. So it's important that anyone could use this recipe and come with exact same result. It's also about replicability, right? It's very important that we have clear instruction and we do things always in the same way, and that we tell the participant the exact same instruction every time. It's also really, really important to abide by the ethics form that was approved by the ethics committee. So the research procedure must align perfectly on what we disclose as what will be the experimentation, the manipulation, and the task conducted by the participant. Also, all of this is also to create a really interesting work environment where things are clean and people know what to do. So what you want is that you want to leave the room in the way that you expect people will leave the room for you. Also to take care about these instrumentation. These equipment, they cost a lot of money, and we want to be able to use them with as many students and research assistants as possible. So when we entrust you with using our equipment, we also trust your professionalism, that you'll be using them properly and scientifically, and that you'll be using them in a way that you will respect the instrumentation provided to you, and that you will keep them clean and you'll keep them operable for the next data collection, next student that will be using them. All right, so hopefully that was useful, and looking forward to see your experiment in your lab room.